Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Wednesday live stream. So I hope this finds you all well. And as you join in your numbers, can I just remind you to do the usual thing, namely, if you like what you're seeing on this, do me a favor, and if you're on Periscope, send hearts, send super hearts. Let me know what you think of the content. If you're on YouTube, make sure you engage with us, and similarly on Facebook as well. Share, get the conversation out there, and we're going to have a good action-packed hour. And I am particularly pleased to welcome to the stream tonight, of course, the co-founder of Alt News Media, as well as the chairman of for Britain, and my good friend Ed. So Ed, you're very welcome to the stream.
Evening, David. Hello, everybody. Good to be back.
So a lot's going on since we spoke last week. I mean, what's not to? What are we going to talk about? As always, becomes a
There's
thing.
no shortage. It's great for us, isn't it? There's no shortage of stuff to talk about on an hourly basis, never mind daily basis. It's incredible.
Well, I wonder. I mean, this. I'll tell you now, folks, as you're joining. Thanks, Jed, for reminding everyone. Let me just take it up on the screen. Remember to share. Sharing is caring when it comes to these kind of things, folks. So make sure you do that so that I can get as many people into the conversation as possible. So listen, let me ask you a question. Those of you joining, has anyone been following developments in the crazy world of football? Even tonight, Ed, just before we came on air, we had the strange sight of a football match being played behind closed doors, but with the added unusual factor of crowd noises being piped into the stadium. And even better, the crowd noises were amped up if it was, if someone went for a tackle or something, or near miss or whatever. Has anyone else? I mean, I'm not sure, you may not have seen it, Ed, but if anyone on the stream saw that, let me know what you think of that one there, because it struck. Yeah, hang on, Chris has got a comment. Let me bring up Chris's comment here, Chris. Ed, this sums it up. So football's kind of been much in the news, and there's a couple of angles to it I want us to talk about, Ed. And the first one is, I'm going to just share that with them. I'm going to show this to everybody. So you're going to see the wonderful new Arsenal shirt, and there it is. Does that set your heart aflutter, folks? What does that do for you, Ed?
Yeah, well, the first thing I'm drawn to there is Liverpool 25 points clear at the top of the league, which is obviously fantastic. But so I think Arsenal, actually, that's not enough for Arsenal. They're actually going to wear rainbow laces as well tonight for their game. So they're going the full virtue signalling hog this evening. So yeah, I mean, it's been quite interesting because we've already covered this, that the aims of Black Lives Matter aren't quite as virtuous as people perhaps are led to believe. And when you look at the backlash, so Sky tweeted a picture of all 22 players take a knee. Interesting to see all the responses, overwhelmingly negative in terms of football fans and people just saying there's just no place for this. This is a terrible, terrible idea. And I think what really irks people is there was a load of hoo-ha over the poppy on the shirt. There was, we can't have a poppy on and yeah, we got the poppy on the shirt eventually. But this is just steamrolled through with no debate, discussion, no critical analysis of what this represents. And I think it's just generated quite a bit of ill feeling towards football, and to the point where actually I'm seeing people say, I'm done with football if this carries on. I know a few people have cancelled their Sky over it. I just don't see the point. Why get involved? Why mix sport and politics? There's no need to do it at all. And you've got to feel for the players that maybe are a little bit uncomfortable with it, because one of the aims, if you go onto the GoFundMe for Black Lives Matter UK, you've just raised just under $1 million, and read what they stand for. I I imagine a lot of players will be uncomfortable with some of that stuff. We already know they want to destroy the family unit. That's a goal in their manifesto, destroy capitalism and all the rest of it. So I think it's putting unfair pressure on all players, because any player who doesn't do it will be shredded by the media and everybody else. So it's an own goal, and for a football analogy, it's an absolute own goal. Don't see the point. Really, don't see the point.
I think for me, I mean, it's like crime in a multi-story car park. It's wrong on so many different levels. Boom, boom.
Mm-hmm.
Folks, you should be paying for this kind of quality entertainment that we're providing you tonight. but okay, so I'll tell you why I think it's really wrong. First of all, are these the same football association who found the wearing of a poppy problematical? A poppy to mark our war dead? That was a problem. Problematical, gave them some issues. However, having the insignia of a Marxist, indeed, some would call it a black supremacist organization on the shirts, yeah, that's fine. What's not to like about that? It's also important. And I think it also puts a massive pressure on every player. Imagine you were a black football player, Ed, and you didn't agree with Black Lives Matter. What you going to do?
Yeah. I mean, this is it. It's putting people in very uncomfortable positions, and that just isn't right. I mean, I think it was last season, Pep Guardiola, the manager of Manchester City, wore it was I think it was some sort of emblem for the Basque region in Spain, and I can't remember what exactly it stood for, but I think he got a fine. He got severely chastised because it was deemed a political statement, which is not allowed. I mean, you couldn't get a more political statement than this. So the rules are just being ripped up and chucked in the bin without any discussion or debate. Or, I mean, as I said before, there's no need to do it. And certainly not without discussion. And I do wonder whether this would have happened if the fans were in the stadium, because I suspect there would be quite a lot of opposition. And it's easy because there's no fans. It's almost convenient, isn't it, that this can happen and they can show the world how virtuous they are. But, this is an organisation that wants to smash capitalism, and football is a £4 or £5 billion industry per year. So, yeah, makes no sense. Just makes no sense.
I think for me as well, like for example, we saw what happened in London on Saturday when there was groups of people came down, statue protesters more than anything else, and they include quite a significant number of football fans, football lads. And so by definition, I'm guessing those football lads go to see football. And I'm sure those football fans would have a bit of an issue going to see games in which the players are actually running around promoting an organization whose members, in some instances, may have beaten 7 bells out of them at the weekend in London. So I'm not. So it's a very good point you make. They do this behind closed doors in their artificial stadiums, artificial atmosphere stadiums where the virtue signaling can be strong. But another thing I wanted to say, folks, I don't know, I'm not sure if I'm the only person who listens to Talk Sports Radio. I was saying to Ed before we came on stream, but I do, because I can't abide the awful BBC and stuff like that. So it's been one of the things that I like to wake to, because I enjoy it, Ed, because when Alan Brazil presented it, it was always about football, sport, and that's all, and good banter and no politics. Perfect way to start the day in some regards. But now we've got wokey Laura Woods, who presents it Monday to Wednesday. And all of a sudden now, if anyone else tunes into this, folks, you'll find that the first 15, 20 minutes of that, from 7 to about 7:20, it's all about Black Lives Matters and how brave and how noble it is, and how we gotta support the terrible discrimination these multi-millionaire black footballers. Oh no, forget about that. But I guess you know my point. So I actually tweeted at the Med to say that I didn't even understand what they were actually promoting, and there came the response back to me: find yourself another breakfast channel station to listen to, which I have done, by the way. Thanks, Talk Sports Radio. But the problem is, Ed, isn't it, that Black Lives Matter is being enabled by right across the spectrum, including in this case Talk Sports Radio. They're
Yeah.
enabling an anti-capitalist organization. Isn't that strange?
It's very strange. I mean, there is a collective kind of mental illness here that's going on. But I think that response to you is very telling and very typical of find yourself another radio station. There is no discussion. There's no, okay, well, tell us what the issue is. Let's discuss it. Let's debate it. There is none of that going on at the moment. And that isn't a good, healthy society when that happens. And we're seeing it across the piece. And this is just another example of it. But it's this complete and utter intolerance of a different opinion. Go and find another radio station. Well, you know, when did this come into society where there's this level of utter intolerance of other perspectives or other viewpoints? The response there would be, I tell you what, phone in and let's have a discussion on it. And you tell me why it's a bad thing, and I'll tell you why it's a good thing. But no, it's incredible, to the point of, you know, we'll lose. It's like Sky, you know, we'll lose viewers over it. But hey, we're going to just push this agenda anyway. It's madness. I don't get it. Don't get it.
I think the bizarre thing is when it comes to some of these media channels like Talk Sports Radio, they've kind of embraced what they think Black Lives Matter is, and I think they think Black Lives Matter is, well, it's about getting, you know, it's about dealing with racial inequalities, and they kind of they're selling or they're conveying an image of Black Lives Matters, which isn't Black Lives Matters, because everyone who's tuned in on social media, thank goodness, can see some of the savagery that their supporters have gotten up to. We can see the killings that we've seen in the United States of Black life people, such as Captain David Dorn, for example, just being one. But so I actually said to Talk Sports Radio, you do understand that this organization is committed to the overthrow of police and the emptying of our prisons. Answer came there none. And I'll tell you why there came no answer, because I don't think they understand what they're promoting very well. I think they just want to be woke. They want to be seen to be progressive. And, you know, and therefore the madness spreads. So they're all taking a knee. All the football players are taking a knee. They've all got the Black Lives Matters insignia on their kit. Yeah. And, you know, you do wonder, Ed, where's it going to end? You know, who's going to be the first footballer not to take a knee?
Well, this is a good question. I mean, I'll just, for people listening, and they may not have read this, I'm just on their GoFundMe at the moment, and this is the UK offshoot of Black Lives Matter. So how they're going to spend the money, they're talking about that. So they're talking about how they will challenge the rise of right wing across the world. So straight away, that's political, okay? Challenging the rise of the right wing from Brazil to Britain. Now, as we know, and we pushed an article out yesterday, I think it was, around how UAF, United Against Fascism, Stand Up to Racism, etc., have latched on to Black Lives Matter. So, you know, I'm sure there are some really good people with good intentions of Black Lives Matter still haven't realised that actually they've been hijacked by long in the tooth, you know, 70s and 80s Labour unionists who jump onto these things, and they're agitators and they're political agitators and hijack the movement. So anyway, again, talking about spending the money, and they've raised £1 million in the last couple of days. You know, they'll be working with anti-racism groups. So, you know, that's your Stand Up to Racism, that's United Against Fascism, who we know are organisations that get involved in trouble. They shut down democracy. They mob-handedly attack people on the streets and so on and so forth. So, they are setting up a group to monitor the police. So are the football clubs happy that these people are anti-police? You know, the police, don't they police football matches? And so, you know, it's not, the thing is, this information isn't hard to find. It's not hidden away. It's actually published. It's public. So again, the level of scrutiny here is, and I'm just quite surprised there isn't at least one club chairman that is a bit more wily, has said, hang on a minute, do we want to be actually jumping into bed with this? This could really backfire and blow up in our faces. So, Yeah, what can I say?
Yeah,
Remarkable.
yeah, it is, and it's sort of sad because I think it's going to spoil sport for so many people because not everyone wants to see a bunch of virtue signalers running around. Not everyone, especially actually when it comes to footballers who are certainly in the Premier League anyway. These
Yeah.
people are extremely well paid.
Well, we
And
talked about this quite recently, and I think the vast majority of people who go and watch football drop all their viewpoints, political, whatever, and stand together on the terraces or sit together on the terraces because it's a unifying experience, and
yeah,
you start bringing politics into it and that kind of divisiveness amongst the same set of fans, and that isn't a good, smart move at all. So I fully believe most people, whatever their political viewpoint, right, left, in the
yeah,
middle, don't want to see this. They don't want to see this kind of thing being dragged into sports. Football is not there to police the world. It's there to provide entertainment for people. It's not there to morally lecture you on what you should or shouldn't think or believe. So yeah, it's
but as Jed here says on the screen, Ed, the difficulty is nobody in power wants to go up against BLM as it's a career
I think
killer.
Jed's quite right there, and one person would be absolutely crucified. I mean, look at Lawrence Fox when he spoke up on Question Time. He was mercilessly, he handled it quite well. I just wonder with this one, though, whether there must be more than one or two think like this, could get together and as a group maybe object to the Premier League or, some club representatives rather than a single person. But I do think it would be a bit like whoever breaks the dam. If somebody stepped forward, I think then others would. And we'd soon get a bit of a shift in narrative. But whoever comes up first, yeah, you're right, they would be absolutely crucified by the media and everybody else, because this is all they want to talk about. I mean, they talked about racism nonstop anyway, and what's happened in the last few weeks has just sent them into overdrive. They cannot help themselves but bring racism into every subject, whether it exists or not. They're just obsessed with it, and people are sick of it. I mean, my family and people who aren't even politically interested whatsoever, they're all saying, what is going on? Why is this non-stop just rammed down our throats? We're sick to death of it. We get the message. We don't need it on you switch your Skybox on now, and right at the top, the first thing you see is the Black Lives Matter documentary. It's like, you must watch this. You're a bad person if you don't watch it, is the implication. Spotify putting 9 minutes of silence into their playlist. It's really,
Did it?
Yeah.
I missed that. I missed that one. Yeah.
Well, you didn't miss much. 9 minutes of silence.
No, 9 minutes of nothing. Yeah. I think certainly this is unhealthy. What we see happening at the moment. But then, the other aspect of it is, I'm going to just bring it up now because, well, there were two other things I wanted to say. First of all, in the football game that's on tonight, right now, that's still playing between what's it?
It's Villa, isn't it?
Yeah. Villa and Sheffield United. Yeah. So I noticed that although they've obviously kept the crowd out, there's still the team members and the players, I guess the physios and all of that. I noticed a distinct lack of social distancing, and I'm kind of trying to work out now how does the COVID virus understand it must be very clever because it knows not to attack footballers who are. I've seen the manager clapping a player on the shoulder, all the usual stuff.
Well, it's illogical because all these people are tested, so by extension, they know they don't have the virus. So fine, I'm kind of all right with people mingling in a group if they know everybody definitely doesn't have the virus. But then why are the players told not to celebrate together if they score a goal? They can't. They've been told not to celebrate in a group. Well, so none of this makes sense, does it? It's like everything that seems to have been put in place around this. It's illogical. It's not really based on anything sensible. And you ask a simple question and people scratch their heads. It doesn't make sense. If nobody's got the virus, then what's the problem with them celebrating a goal together?
Yeah, well, absolutely right. I mean, it's bizarre, and you do have to wonder about what exactly what is the What, if anything, is the logic behind this? Or is it just all one mad government response to a difficult situation that's not really been thought through, and which they have to keep pretending is the case?
I think, yeah, you're spot on. I think it hasn't been thought through. I mean, the WHO are saying 1 meter, we're saying 2 meter. Why is that? Who's right, who's wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's right. But the difference is between 1 meter and 2 meter. At 2 meter social distancing, you're probably going to make about a couple of million people unemployed. So big difference, big impacts in terms of broader society and whatnot. So so in a strange way, COVID-19 and BLM is kind of linked, because not least because one seemed to very conveniently follow the other. In terms of being able to particularly assault President Trump over in the States. So it does worry. And before anyone says, "Oh, he's a conspiracy theorist," it's just a matter of observable fact that this BLM protest kicked in just as COVID was on the way out.
Well, do you not think it's all very convenient as well after the whole Extinction Rebellion protests? Because you can bet your bottom dollar it's a lot of the same people out there on the streets that have now latched onto this. It's the usual mob, isn't it, that turn up at these things. It's all the same posters. You look at the posters, it's always the same Socialist Workers' Party placards, just with different words on for different protests. So, these people are professional protesters, and their aim is just to undermine government and just undermine the system. They just hate kind of what we stand for, and this is a great cause for them to latch onto. And they cloak themselves in these words that are hard to attack, aren't they? What can you say when someone calls themselves Black Lives Matter or stand up to racism or united against fascism? Well, what? So they make it so they cloak themselves in these words, don't they? Hope not hate, that make it difficult to attack them. But it's the same people. It's always the same people behind the scenes.
Yeah. It is, and it's very menacing because there doesn't seem to be an effective response to them.
No.
Which means that, but in this case, I mean, it's proliferating in all kinds of areas. Did you see today that Aunt Jemima cookie mix in the States and now Uncle Ben's have had to have a bit of a rethink over their brand imagery because that's now deemed unacceptable. So, it's like firing off into all kinds of directions that suggest that this is not just about trying to make sure that George Floyd, gets justice, so to speak, in terms of a fair trial, by the way, for the police officers involved in his death. It's gone so much further beyond that, hasn't it? I mean, it's actually now a fundamental assault on our on everything we have, not least our history.
Yeah, I think if this was a genuine, if this was a good faith, genuine movement, we'd be hearing noises about ending slavery around the world. We'd be hearing noises about modern slavery. The language would be different. All we're hearing about is, smash the racist institutions and bring down capitalism, and I think they would have a lot more sympathy if there was a desire to actually do something proactive to make the world a better place and not just attack bad old America and bad old UK, which is all it seems to be, as painting us as the monsters all the time, when actually and we keep saying it, we are the people ended slavery, and it's what do they actually want, and then that again, that's where the media maybe lets us down a little bit, that when they're interviewing, they don't drill into just, okay, you want to smash the racist institutions. Can you just break that down? What do you actually mean? There's no questioning of this language. What does that mean in practical terms? Because we've said it again many times. There is no law or rule in Britain or America that discriminates on the basis of skin color. And I'll say it again, the most discriminated people against people now, I would say, in the UK and America are white conservatives. You try and book a university speaking slot and speak against trans or speak against climate or speak against Palestine or whatever, you will be mobbed out of it. You will have the mob on you. You'll be cancelled. You'll be discriminated against. And yeah, that's the reality. You know, people might not like it, but that is the reality. And and I think what is slightly unfortunate is, you know, I said it last week. I don't believe we are at all a racist country. I don't think people see skin color anymore. I genuinely don't. In the 80s and 70s, there was an issue. I 100% accept that, but it is so much better. And this is actually stirring up racial tension. This is actually making things worse, because we're seeing people getting beaten up. We're seeing very one-sided accounts of things. You know, we saw mobs beating up guys just because they were white in London. And, you know, this isn't helping, is it? What's this doing for race relations? It certainly isn't helping. So
no, I think it's probably made racial tensions greater rather than reduce them. And you know, we've seen it. I mean, we've seen there's been no shortage of videos on social media demonstrating incredible violence towards white people by Black Lives Matters mobs, many of whom are black people. How does that help? You know, if the aim is for us all to live together, oblivious of skin color, surely by flagging up one particular skin color, all you do is aggregate the fundamental issue. And that's how I see this. I think, I mean, I've seen somebody's brought, Mike said here, you know, white lives matter. Well, they do, Mike. All lives matter, which is the line I used, Ed. You know, but if you're going to go on about just one group, then I think, well, as I pointed out before, I think that makes you a racist, because you're just specifically picking one ethnicity to demand that their lives matter somehow more than anyone else's. So for me, I think Black Lives Matter in itself is racist.
No, I agree, but it's a game of the left, isn't it, to divide people into race and skin color, and you know, they're the ones that keep talking about skin color. You know, we don't. You know, typically people center to the right. We just don't. Yeah, we may criticize Islam or something like that, which is nothing to do with skin color at all. It's nothing to do with race. It's nothing to do with race. It's an ideology. And as I say, there seems to be only one group talking about skin color all the time, and that's coming from the left. And unfortunately, they are, you know, maybe the more impressionable people in those communities are believing this message that you are held back by these evil people and they're your enemy and they're not on your side. And it just isn't the case. It really isn't the case. And, you know, which is why I admire somebody like Candace Owens such a lot, who stands up there and takes a load of abuse, racist abuse, actually, for saying, no, there is no limit to what you can do based on your skin color. You know, you can be president of America, you know, so.
Yeah, but the irony is people like Candace Owens, they're called Uncle Toms, aren't they? They're
exactly.
actually, they use racist abuse. Those who proclaim that they're in favor of racial equality actually abuse people, use racist language to denigrate people who don't conform to their view of their own ethnicity. So, I mean, I find them absolutely sickening hypocrites.
Yeah. So the lady, her name has just gone out of my head, who Boris has asked to look into racism. She's Pakistani heritage lady.
Yes.
She's in the Communist Party, interestingly, originally, but she's a Tory, and has said some actually very sensible things in the past. That I don't know if you saw the video. She talked about a black author, I think, had been complimented on her work, and this person had said, you know, it was so articulately written, it was all the rest of it, and this person had taken it as, oh, you think because I'm black I can't write, you know, properly, or I'm not articulate. Now, what she was saying is that is where a perfectly innocent comment is suddenly made into about race when it really isn't. And and that's the mindset we have to get away from. It's a bit like the Floyd killing. There is still no evidence that that had anything to do with race, none whatsoever. So there's this assumption that whenever somebody non-white is involved in something, it's about race. And even if you're being paid a compliment, it's about race. So anyway, so this lady made those perfectly reasonable comments, and she's had an absolute pile on from usual Muslim Council of Britain, all the usual characters. But the big left-wing media outlets like Joe Politics, joe.co.uk, who posted a picture of a Bounty bar, which is symbolizing, obviously, black on the outside, white on the inside, which is this coconut. So you're right. That's where all the racism comes from. And amazingly, these people never get banned off Twitter or anything, do they? They seem to get away with this stuff. So it is extremely one way, but that hits hypocrisy. We know about this. It's there all the time. And it frustrates us, but we know it's there. You just need to look at what they accuse other people of to know how these people think, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, sort of moving the conversation on a little bit, then slightly. I wanted to share this, and it's our Marcus. If I just bring this into the screen, hang on. There we go. So. Everyone, I'm sure, is well aware of this on the news. You can't have missed it.
It's our new chancellor. It's our new chancellor. Yeah.
Yes, the new. Yeah. So Marcus Rashford has apparently been able to achieve more politically than probably most people who voted Conservative back in the December general election, insofar as he's got Boris Johnson to do exactly what he wanted, and that is to extend the so-called free school meals, no such thing, taxpayer subsidized meals, basically through the summer. So okay, Marcus Rashford, our new chancellor, what do you have to say about him, Ed?
Yeah, well, I mean, what I will say is he's done more with one letter than Corbyn did in 4 years as official opposition in terms of getting the government to take action. So I think it comes back to what we talked about before. We don't want to see this, do we? Do we really want to see this sport and politics mixing like this? Again, Rashford, I'm sure, is having his strings pulled by others behind the scenes. And I think, again, what is disappointing is, okay, he may well have felt strongly about this. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. And he's written the letter. What was inevitable and has already happened is, well, this is just a start. And Boris politically is made a bit of a mistake again, because you just don't bow to a Twitter campaign or a footballer demanding something, because that's it now. He's going to embolden that pile on, that community, that pressure, and it's just not the way to do your politics. So I think Boris had his spine removed when he was in hospital, because he seems to be making poor decision after poor decision at the moment. Now, and so what happened was, and this is why you don't do it, as soon as he did the U-turn, and he made a bit of a mess of that, saying he didn't know about the campaign, and I'm sure he did. But anyway, he did the U-turn. So immediately the media are then, we've got a gotcha. And all the language is around, big U-turn and point scoring. And rather than, it's good to see that you made this decision or you made this change, there was no positive result from this for Boris whatsoever. Gary Lineker and co mocking him. So why do it? You are never going to turn the opinions around of this mob or this mindset of, well, we'll give you some credit for that, Boris, or great to see you change your mind. No, he's weak, he's U-turned. It's so you just don't do it. He could have just said no and then done it quietly in a couple of weeks or something. Poor politics, because he set a precedent now, and we're now going to have a row of footballers lining up to come up with policies and push them on social media campaigns, which again is the last thing we want.
Yeah, I mean, someone saying here, Rashford for PM, fantastic guy. Well, he may be a fantastic footballer, but he's also fantastic at giving away other people's money. And one of my contentions in this is that, as I say, the thing about free school meals continually confuses me, because they are not free. Nothing's free in life. It's fully funded. So essentially, what Rashford's wanting is fully taxpayer funded meals for kids. But these kids, in many instances, free, they call them free school meals, Ed. But guess what? Virtually no one's at school. So this is about fully taxpayer funded meals for kids who aren't at home and whose family are most likely, as Angela has previously pointed out on the stream, what's child benefit for then? So I mean, someone, Jed's pointed out, I think, Ed, so-called free school meals are 120 million. 120 million is a lot of free, isn't it?
It is a lot of free. And do you think at the end of summer, it's not going to be, well, this needs to carry on? This is the problem. Absolutely. And there are people who want a socialist state, effectively, that the state provides meals and this, that, and the other, and they can sit at home, and it's not a good precedent to set. And yeah, I'm sure there are some people in extremely difficult situations at the moment. I'm sure there are, but equally, Asda had to put a warning out, didn't they, saying you can't spend this on drink and cigarettes and stop abusing our staff. People trying to cash in the vouchers. So, that'd be funny, but after the war, when it was no one had anything and rations, people grew veg, and it sounds awful, but a lot of these people at the food bank, they're not the slimmest in the world, and they seem to have iPhones and all the rest of it. So I don't know. I think, as I say, there will be some genuine people, but equally, I think it creates laziness, and I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. I think people need to be a little bit more analysed, because as I understand it, they're given vouchers by your doctor, can give you food bank vouchers, or the church, so it's a very subjective of the individual giving out the vouchers to who they give them to, and yeah, I don't know. But of course, the same left are now up in arms that we're getting Boris's jet painted in the Union flag at £900,000. So they're happy to, 120 million, no problem, but £900,000 is suddenly a ridiculous amount of money. So.
Yeah, and they're quite happy for £14 billion to go overseas. So strange that, isn't it? 14 billion, that can go overseas, but 900 grand or whatever for a paint job in an aircraft, it's just unacceptable. It's unacceptable. Yeah. But I also think there is a general rule in life, that if you reward certain behaviors, you get more of those behaviors. And this is where I've seen other commentators on social media today saying that, look, this is generally speaking probably quite a good thing. It will help. It will bring much needed food to those who perhaps struggle to get food. You see, I just don't disagree with that. I completely disagree with that. I think that it's going to reward the wrong kind of behavior, in my view. I wonder what you thought of that.
No, I agree. And I think the food that that's given out as well, it's vouchers. Fresh fruit, vegetables, decent food. It could be used and spent a little better, I would say. There are questions, obviously, why we need all these food banks, and do we actually need them all, as well, as another question. There's a 10 grand incentive to set up a food bank, and I don't know. I think we are creating a society that's more and more reliant on the state and on handouts, and generally that isn't a good thing. I don't think.
Actually, can I just say, Angela, I agree with you. If we shut down some of these betting companies, these huge corporations who make so much, probably a lot of it from those who really shouldn't be spending money in that regard. That might be a good thing to do as well, So there's different ways to tackle this one. But I just think fundamentally, I think at a time where, let's face it, because of COVID and because of lockdown, millions of people could be losing their jobs, to see taxpayer funds being shunted off to pay for free school meals, with those who are not at school and who have at least a parent, I presume, is just going to reward the wrong behavior, and we're going to get so much more of it.
And I think, just my kind of last word on this, it's the easy target, isn't it? Get the government to pay. A Rashford shirt, official Rashford shirt with number 10 on the back from the United shop will cost you about £80. Okay. And they're typically bought by, I guess, the working class estate kids in Wythenshawe, where Rashford's coming from. Yet they're made in sweatshops abroad, these shirts, for pennies, modern slavery. So why didn't Rashford come out and say, I'm unhappy with child labour to make these shirts that are then sold, and pressure, parents are under pressure from the kids, aren't they, to buy the latest home strip or whatever it might be. So Rashford could have come out and made a bit of a comment there, couldn't he, of we need to perhaps change the way this all happens. These shirts should be affordable and so it's easy though, isn't it? Just more handout is, Yeah,
and of course it is a feature of the political left. The political left, because they don't understand economics, thinks you can just keep spraying the money endlessly without any consequences, and everybody who's got even half a brain on the sort of in the center understand that you can't do that. You just can't keep spraying it the way they want to. But their appetite is relentless, and however much Boris Johnson gives, it's never going to be enough. And we've seen that actually, I think, in the Commons today, where Keir Starmer basically, if Boris suggests he's going to give 120 million away, why not 220 million? This is unfortunately the nature of the political battle that continually wages between the right and the left. And it's always disappointing when you see those who claim to be on the right caving to demands from the left,
which we are seeing more and more. I mean, the reality is, we as a country, we have given more to sustain people through COVID than any other country in Europe. For businesses, for the furlough scheme. When have you once heard any of the media or any of the Labour Party say, actually, good job, you've done well here? There hasn't been one bit of thanks so you can't win. You can't win. You'll never feed that beast. It's never enough.
That's right. In fact, Ed, the more you feed it, the hungrier it gets, and the more it demands. They want more, and that is unfortunately the political reality of it. But for some reason, and I think, as you said earlier, maybe Boris did get his spine taken out when he was in hospital, because he seems to have lost any ability to say just enough. I mean, he's also, by the way, the same guy who's presiding over Winston Churchill in a box.
Well, I mean, I think that's quite symbolic, isn't it? The fact that Churchill's in a box. It's a kind of good metaphor for the way the Tories are currently leading, in inverted commas, the country. And it's shameful, absolutely shameful. I'm sure Sadiq Khan's laughing his head off at home every time he sees that box.
It's such a disgrace, and it's so sad that we've got a prime minister who won't listen to the voices demanding Churchill be put back in display, but he will listen to Marcus Rashford demanding more free stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this, but all the disgraceful scenes over the weekend and the way it was reported, I had a bit of high hopes for Priti Patel, but she's proved to be pretty useless in terms of not just the migrant boats, because they're coming over. Whilst all this is going on, we're all missing the fact that every day more and more boats are coming in unchecked across the channel. But a Tory government attacked. Yeah, there were a few football hooligans there, no doubt, and idiots, and nobody wanted to see them there. But equally, there were marches of veterans, really good people there, had no coverage, no comment. The serious violence, the really serious violence, wasn't committed by the sort of, what we call the monument protectors or what the collective term. And then Priti Patel just dives in, smears everybody with one umbrella, far right thugs, racists, and all the rest of it. The Tories had better wake up, because the mob sees the Tories the same as they see the veterans, they see the people they call far right. So there's no point trying to appease that mob because they'll never do it, and they're as hated as everybody else. So I was pretty appalled by that lack of actually even just calling out some of the incidents that happened. I mean, it was, probably attempted murder on more than one occasion there on somebody just because they were caught in the wrong place in the wrong skin color on Saturday evening, and it didn't make a headline. So yeah, very disappointed in this Tory government. And as I say, Boris and Winston Churchill in a box kind of sums them up, if I'm perfectly honest.
Yeah, it kind of does actually. Yeah, although I see someone has reported, Ed, that apparently the BBC is reporting that apparently the hoarding is to come down on around Churchill.
It's supposed to come down today. It's come down on the cenotaph, but apparently the Churchill is under Khan's remit. So I think it's come down on the cenotaph, but I don't know if the Churchill's come down.
This is where Boris has been weak. Boris, not Sadiq Khan, should have determined what happened to our national monuments, like the cenotaph, like the Boris statue. And actually, something, in my view, what they should do is they should build a statue about 3 times the size of the current Churchill statue and put it in the 4th plinth in Trafalgar Square. It's about time this country actually stood up for the people who have made this country great, and that's what it is. It is it's a great country we live in. It's not perfect, but it's better than most. And we just don't seem to be able to stand up for ourselves, and we allow other people to come along, kick us in the teeth. Not least those who have not been here for perhaps centuries, and they just come along and they whine and they complain, and they're listened to. So we need to toughen up. But hey, Ed, we need it in the last sort of segment here. I wanted to get in with. Let's move on to a lighter topic: World War III. So what I'm going to talk about here, folks, is, and again, I'm sure you'll have seen this in the news. You've seen the news that China and India have got into a standoff in the disputed Ladakh region, and it's really quite. It might seem something happening, in a country far, far away, of which we know little. But let me explain why I think it's got huge relevance. And why I think it's relevant is that throughout this whole COVID pandemic, China has got away with murder, not least in terms of how did that virus get out? When did it get out? What did they say? What did they hide? What did they cover? What was the role of the Wuhan virology lab? All of that onto the carpet, not even talked about. But at the same time, as the rest of the world's been, in great trouble economically and in every other way, health, of course, China's been flexing its muscle. So in this region, where it goes up against the border with India, it's gone on full aggression mode. It's moved in vast numbers of soldiers. There were deaths. There were, I think, 27 Indian soldiers, maybe more, killed. And of course, who knows how many Chinese, because you can't get the truth out of the Chinese. But here's my concern. If China's successful in flexing its muscle against India, which is a nuclear power, which other countries might it exercise its muscle against? And that's where I'm coming from it. I wonder what you think about that.
Yeah, I think China's become a growing threat over recent years, and I couldn't tell you the name. There's a guy that left. He's fairly high up in the higher echelons of Chinese government and now lives in the States. And he was interviewed about 18 months ago, and he was warning of this. He was talking about China is on a war footing. It's on an aggressive.
Yeah.
It's on full on aggression. It wants to be the superpower, and the mentality isn't one of nicey. It will do anything to win, and we see that, don't we? We see the way the human rights and the way they behave with their own people. If they're prepared to put their own people in concentration camps, then what would they do to others? So it is a concern, and it's such a vast, huge country with such a huge amount of resource in terms of people that, I think it's the biggest threat we probably face now globally in terms of our global peace. Well, it is the biggest threat. I've no doubt about that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, China is a global predator. and it's chancing its arm against India. I think it's in for a surprise. I don't think India will roll over. But what I would like to see is, for example, the rest of the civilized world actually support India. I'd like to see the UK, the US, Australia, other countries actually say to Prime Minister Modi that they support his stance in defending every inch of his soil from Chinese aggression. And and as you say, the thing about China is its tendrils are all around the world. They're here in the UK as well, folks. I'm sure you're well aware that I think it's the only nuclear power plant that's being built at the moment is being built by China here.
Yeah, so, it's at Hinkley Point, is it? I think it
Hinkley
is.
Point,
it?
Yeah. So let me think about that. So China would actually therefore then, one way or the other, control the very power that this country needs to operate. Do you think might something go terribly wrong with that if we annoyed China? What do you think?
Yeah, and of course the Huawei, I can never say it, Huawei. Huawei, yeah, the telecoms and infrastructure. And you look at what they've done right across Africa. They are ruthless. And I think we need to, again, we unfortunately we have spineless leadership, don't we? We've had this for too long in the West. Take Trump out of the equation. It's the same when Qatar bought up all our ports years ago. I don't know if people realize this, but all our ports are now owned by Qataris, and they tried to do it in America as well. And luckily, George Bush basically told them to do one. But it's very, very irresponsible to sell off your assets to potentially threatening foreign powers, because one day we know our political tides change. So we might be best of friends, and then a decade later, the whole thing can change. So yeah, some foolish mistakes, and nuclear power, telecoms infrastructure, we should not be giving any of this stuff to China. And you're right, in terms of India or anywhere else in the world, we need to be supporting anybody that comes up against them.
And I think as Rose points out here on the stream, I mean, she's sort of saying that regarding Huawei, if we integrate or allow it even any way to have access to our communications network or 5G, that would mean that essentially our ability to be part of the Five Eyes global intelligence community would be severely compromised. That's why the Americans were so annoyed about it. That it is it's potentially very, very disturbing in terms of our future security. So why on earth did Boris ever think that was a good idea?
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's obviously rethinking it. And that realization has hit home a little bit. So yeah, I think it is a worrying situation. We'll have to see how that one. I mean, what are your thoughts on? Because there's talk about where Pakistan might come into this, and what may be a sort of after effect of this potential conflict in terms of Pakistan. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that.
Well, you mean Pakistan is fundamentally a failed state. Pakistan is a jihad enabler. Just a matter of observable fact.
But I was reading that Pakistan may be going to be doing something. I read a report that there's kind of talk about Pakistan on the back of what's happening with China making some move over the coming days, and just wondered if you'd got any, or you'd heard anything about that, or any opinion on that.
Well, I think honestly, Pakistan itself is in many regards absolutely toothless. But what it is, Pakistan is up for sale. So China is essentially wanting to buy its way, actually not just into Pakistan, but through Pakistan, because by getting a channel through Pakistan, that then enables China with a further route to get itself right across the continent towards the distant seas. So Debbie saying Pakistan is not toothless. Yeah, Debbie, I maybe could have chosen a better word. Pakistan is dangerous. Pakistan is a menace. What I'd like to see India do, Ed and Debbie, if if Pakistan tries anything, then I think India needs to do what it should have done in 1991, and that is it needs to march in there and sort them out once and for good, because you cannot conceivably live with a voracious neighbor on your border which sends terrorists into your country, and just let that continue to happen without any consequences. And for years, of course, because India had the wrong people in power, just like we've got the wrong people in power, that situation was allowed to, to fester, and therefore that's why Pakistan has literally got away with murder. But it has to end, and I think Pakistan is essentially, and this is, Debbie, if I may say, where I think I am very clear, it's financially in great trouble. I mean, its economy is a mess, and that's why actually one of the things I've argued for, and I was on a stream last night about this, Ed, was I believe the best thing for the people of Pakistan, not the politicians, the people of Pakistan, is to break it up into individual different regions. Free Baluchistan, free Sindhi, free the various areas of Pakistan which are being terribly oppressed by that Pakistani government at the moment. The Pakistani government, which is canoodling up to the Chinese, and I think that therefore, if we could, and that's why I want us, the UK, to support India, but I don't see any evidence of it, and I fear that again, we'll keep quiet, we'll stay stum on the basis that let India do its own work, but we should be support. I like to have seen Boris do something publicly in support to make sure that Modi is supported against the imperial Chinese, because, as I say, Ed, the Chinese will come for Taiwan. I mean, they won't reckon they consider Taiwan to be part. And in fact, actually, on the whole Taiwan thing, what bothers me, the Taiwanese had figured out that there was this plague happening in China towards the back end of 2019. But because the WHO won't recognize Taiwan, lest it annoy the Chinese, the Taiwanese were ignored. So in a way, we could have, maybe lives could have been saved if people didn't pander to China. The WHO, which is also owned by China, pandered to them. Thank God President Trump's cut all funding from them. What a great thing. Why is the UK still a major funder to the WHO?
Yeah. Well, as we said before, even on the basics, I mean, I think in February they were still saying how wrong it was to call this a pandemic. It might have even been March they were saying that, and some of the language was incredible. There's no evidence it spreads from human to human, and this again in February. So, and then the one thing they've come out with, which is their guideline of 1 meter distancing, we're saying, well, that's wrong, and we're doing 2 meters. So, what purpose did they actually serve?
Well, did you see the story in the news today about the fact there's been a bit of an outbreak in Beijing of COVID? Did you see that story?
Yes.
I was amazed to see the Chinese were blaming it on British salmon.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they've got such a brass neck that it almost beggars belief that the Chinese are blaming British salmon for a virus which President Trump rightly called the China virus, and that is what it was, and that's what it remains. But that's what our spineless media won't even talk about, mainly because, as I think as Julie says here, I mean, Dr. Tedros is fundamentally, in the back pocket of the Chinese. An Ethiopian Marxist whose doctorate is not in medicine. Yeah, let's put him in charge of the WHO. What could possibly go wrong? And then, Kez says salmon which live in cages. But so that's all I think is that we have to keep a close eye on what happens in places long way away, like the China India conflict, because I think it's relevant to what's happening in the UK and could affect all of our lives, just like the China virus itself affected all our lives. So I'd like to see China punished, I have to say, but seems to be little will to do that, sadly.
Yeah, well, the reparations, they should be. I mean, they should be absolutely held to account. You can bet if this originated from America, that would be the language across every country and every media station right now about squeezing cash out of America. So I don't know why that isn't a bigger issue, to be fair. I know for Britain, that's there's a petition that is being handed in for exactly that reason. And, yeah.
Well, as I said, look, we've kind of done a bit of a saunter through the political domain. We've gone from Black Lives Matters in football to our new Chancellor, Marcus Rashford, and finally ending up in the China-India border. So listen, folks, no one can tell you that we don't travel around on these live streams. But listen, the hour is about to end. So listen, can I thank you very much for being on the stream? Thank you for being here. Can I offer my thanks to everybody who's been on the stream? Thanks for all your kind comments, and bye to the little trolls who unfortunately were squashed. So sad. And looking forward to being with you again, folks, this Friday night. So from me, it's good night,
and it's good night from me.
There you go.
Two Ronnies.
The two Ronnies will never be dead. Ed Wood's still alive. Listen, thank you very much, everyone, and catch up with you real soon. Bye for now.
Bye.